Okay, everybody, this section is on Leni Riefenstahl's Olympia, which was her 4-hour documentary on the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. And this movie, I have a version, but you can see it's a little bit pixelated. It's not the best quality, but you can certainly see it. I wanted to make the whole movie available to you. It's not required for you to watch the whole 4 hours, but I thought you might be interested. And you can kind of scrub through and find the parts that you like. There's a long opening. Actually, Leni Riefenstahl is one of these. I think I'm not sure which person here she is, but she played one of these people. Remember, her background was as a dancer and an actress, and she became a writer, director, producer. We read a little bit about the resources that they gave her to do Triumph of the Will, and of course, similar massive resources given to her to do this documentary on the Olympics. And this was really the first document of the Olympics, and you can almost imagine it just looking at this opening here as, you know, a huge event. And this really kind of set the bar for all sports documentaries, certainly all Olympic coverage from this time on. So it's long, but it's really, really interesting. You know, and this is also interesting because while Triumph of the Will was pure propaganda, there's definitely a propaganda element to this movie, but it actually gave Germany a lot of good propaganda at a time when they really needed it in 1936. I guess the movie was finished in 1938. So really, really close to the outbreak of the war. And I always look at stuff like this as a time capsule. It's a look back in time. And of course, there's Hitler at the opening ceremonies. Hitler loved sports. And of course, the Nazi idea of Aryan superiority certainly gets thrown out the window in this. And I'm going to show you the scene where Jesse Owens wins the gold medal. He won multiple gold medals in these Olympics. So you can go through this on your own. Also, so groundbreaking in that this was the first movie to do many film techniques. And here we are 20 minutes in and the games haven't even really started yet, but it's the amount of cameras that she had, you know, the camera angles, often these extremely unusual angles during the sport. So let me fast forward here to some of the actual games. And look at that slow motion, the use of slow motion. And unfortunately, the subtitles on this version come up as black, but you can still read them most of the time. Lots of slow motion. And we can really see Riefenstahl's, she's focused on the human form in this. Think back to Muybridge also, almost, you know, the motion, the fascination of motion. But not only all the camera angles, but you can analyze the editing through a lot of this, and there's some smash cuts. I'm going to show you the very end of the movie, which I think is some of the most brilliant filmmaking that I've ever seen, the diving sequence. But even this shot, look, she just chooses to shoot. Let's look at this slow motion for a second. So this is an overcranked camera recording more frames per second than your usual 24. And she also used many tracking shots throughout. So I'm going to fast forward to the spot where Jesse Owens wins the gold. Here we go. And also, and look at this historical footage, so valuable. And you know, this is 1936, a time of intense segregation in America, intense racism. But I'm going to also show you another little 3-minute documentary about this moment in a bit.
Rückenwind nicht anerkannt. Die Entscheidung im 100-Meter-Lauf. Die 6 schnellsten Läufer der Welt sind angetreten. Borgmeier, Weikhoff, Owens, Strandberg, Osendarp und Metcalf. Owens liegt schon vorn, Strandberg hinter ihm, Osendarp kämpft sich heran. Metcalf kommt, Ziel! Sieger 100 Meter Lauf, Jesse Owens.
All right, so very historical moment in Olympic history. He wins it very handily, and they say, not accepted, do it again. So he does it again, and he wins it just as handily. So I believe he won 3 gold medals, or 3 or 4 gold medals. This is a big moment also, and I'll show you this mini 3-minute documentary about this moment right after this, but take a look.
Im Weitsprung hat sich der Kampf zu einer Entscheidung zwischen dem Deutschen Lutz Long und dem schnellsten Läufer der Welt, Jesse Owens, zugespitzt. Meter 54. Jesse Owens. Meter 74. 20 Zentimeter weiter als Long. Und nun wieder Long. Meter 84. Der Deutsche führt. Und 7,87 Meter. Wieder 3 Zentimeter weiter. Lutz Long. Nun noch einmal Jesse Owens. Meter 6. Neuer Weltrekord. Goldmedaille für Amerika.
All right, so what a moment, right? And did you like the filmmaking there, the choice of cuts, the angles, the slow motion, and even though it was a very short sequence, only a couple of minutes, the amount of suspense that she builds up. And what about this image? Talk about an ominous image, right? This is 4 years before, 3 to 4 years before the outbreak of the war, when America would fight both Nazi Germany and Japan. Quite a moment. So now I want to show you this mini documentary about that very moment. And I love it when old footage gets repurposed, and I think Leni Riefenstahl's footage from both Triumph of the Will and Olympia have been used and reused so much. So take a look at this little 3-minute bit about that moment in Olympic history.
It is not only a tally of medals which turns a champion into a hero. If there's one man who will exemplify the ultimate Olympic hero, it is America's Jesse Owens. His achievements, though equal since in the record books, are as remarkable for the dignity and grace in which they were performed as for the barriers they broke. Archie Williams was Owens' teammate in 1936 and the winner of the 400 meters.
I guess I would call him the Superman of the team, and everybody knows that. But I mean, I felt that he was one in a million.
Surrounded by Nazi propaganda and its doctrine of Aryan superiority, Owens became the dominant figure of the 1936 Games in Berlin. He was cheered every time he entered the stadium and treated like a star. He was, after all, the fastest man in the world, black or white. Owens won the 100 meters with relative ease from his teammate Ralph Metcalfe. The 200 meters saw a bigger margin of victory, breaking the Olympic record by almost half a second. He completed the sprint treble by helping the American 4x100 meter relay team to a 12-yard victory with a world record that would stand for 20 years. His fourth gold medal proved to be more of a battle.
He was so good. He never practiced a long jump. I don't think he practiced enough, because some of the times he would foul out, or he would almost miss qualifying because he didn't have a step down.
Owens almost failed to qualify for the long jump until his main rival, the German Lutz Long, suggested that he move his mark back and make sure of a safe, legal jump. Once in the final, Owens and Long battled it out in front of a strongly partisan crowd. When Long actually equaled Owens' jump, the German crowd erupted in excitement. Owens responded with an even longer leap, then sealed his victory with a new Olympic record with his final jump. In front of Hitler and the 100,000 crowd, Lutz Long was the first person to congratulate Owens, cementing a friendship that was to last until Long was killed at the Battle of San Pietro in 1943. Recalling his feelings at the time, Owens later said, "You can melt down all the medals and cups I have, and they wouldn't be a plating for the 24-carat friendship I felt for Lutz Long at that moment."
Isn't that just amazing? The idea that the crowd was so partisan, but that they loved Jesse Owens. The local German crowd loved Jesse Owens. Isn't that amazing? And that Lutz Long, his rival, became a very close friend and actually helped him in this match. And to think that Lutz Long, this Olympic athlete, would go on to get killed in the war is just mind-boggling. And actually, he was killed in the Battle of San Pietro, and there is a famous documentary about that battle, one of the very first combat documentaries, and we'll take a look at that. But what an amazing moment, isn't it? Really, really incredible.
Proved to be more of a battle.
The last thing I want to show you of Olympia is, and this is part 2 here, so there are 2 parts to the whole thing, 4 hours long. Don't feel like you have to look at it, but if you like sports documentaries, if you're interested, I highly recommend watching it. It's just, let's look at some of this gymnastics. So again, really set the bar in terms of sports movies moving forward. But my absolute favorite part, and probably some of my favorite filmmaking of all time, is this bit at the end. And this is the end of the whole 4 hours. And Leni Riefenstahl ends it with this diving sequence. And I think of sports documentaries today and wonder if there would ever be a filmmaker interested in sort of doing this. All right, let me just back it up. So it's a few minutes long, and this is what I consider poetic. Her use of editing, the angles, all the various coverage. There's even a few shots where we get to see an underwater camera. And I believe they even built an area of the pool that was glass so that she could film underwater. But take a look at this ending. This is the ending of the 4-hour document on the Olympics, and it's entirely poetic in my opinion. Let's take a look. All right, so what did you think? That's the ending of the whole thing. And what an amazing sequence, right? You could see there's some shots where she's going in reverse. And there are many cuts right here where, look at that edit. That is one of the most amazing edits ever. So pure experimentation with the form. And you get a sense here that they're just suspended in the air. You could tell that as a filmmaker, she's just marveling at the human form. This is just some of the best filmmaking that I've ever seen. The shooting and you know, the cinematography and the editing combined. Wow. Okay. Okay, so all of Olympia is available to you. You don't have to watch the whole thing. It's really just meant to be there for... And I find it really fascinating. I haven't seen the whole thing, but from what I've seen, I really love. Delete that part. All right. Okay, so all of Olympia is available to you. Feel free to watch as much as you would like. I'm glad that we were able to look at these parts of it. There's a lot that's really interesting and noteworthy about it.